All right, I want to welcome on my next guest. We've got recurring guests. We've got Douzable, longtime NFL defensive lineman, amateur chef, as your Twitter says, and a podcast host. Anything is Douzable. Has everything going for you?
I'm doing good, Zach. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. So, amateur chef, what's the most chef type thing you've made in the last couple of days?
I mean, yesterday was Tuesday, so Taco Tuesday is a big thing in my household. So I did a couple tacos yesterday, some cilantro lime. I mean, a grouper, Chipotle lime tacos. Also did some Baja fish tacos, some shrimp tacos, a few scallop tacos. So that, what I'm known for is my crab guac. So I did that yesterday too.
Oh, cool. And so into the playoffs, I didn't think we were going to get here. I didn't see them completing every game. I don't know if they did or they just said, screw it, we're doing it. We got 6 games in the books. What was your biggest takeaway from Wild Card Weekend?
It has to be the Cleveland Browns, right? I think that was one of the, I don't say biggest upsets because I actually picked them to win. But as far as that franchise and them and the non-success they've had, getting a playoff win or even getting back to the playoffs, you have to really give tip of the hat to the Browns organization. Barry, the president, also Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, who wasn't even on the sideline to call that game, proves that he got his players ready to play because a lot of people thought that would be a major factor in them not playing well. And then Baker Mayfield, I mean, he's gotten a lot of scrutiny the last 3 years, and he was able to get over the hump and played really well this past weekend. So you have to say kudos to them. And then that defense, 4 turnovers. I mean, one was a touchdown and then 3 other interceptions. Kudos to that defense for making plays. And, that's a defense this whole year who's been able to get turnovers, bend, don't break type of defense. And the offense is really clicking. And we already knew what they can do with the 1-2 punch at running back. But I think Baker Mayfield and also Jarvis Landry, a lot of people aren't talking about this guy. If I'm starting a franchise, he's one of the first receivers I'm picking just because of the dog mentality that he has and his grit and will not to lose. And I think you saw that this past weekend versus Steelers, play after play after play. When they needed a big play, Baker Mayfield found Jarvis Landry, and he showed up big for them.
This is what I wanted them to do. They didn't do. They should have had a camera in Kevin Stefanski's basement. They should have had Stefanski cam off on the side, just watching him lose his mind off every play. That would have been electric. That would have been
my thing is there's a lot of coaches that are superstitious in the NFL. Will he not call this game and stay at home, which probably is not going to happen? Yeah. He'll probably most likely travel to Kansas City. But will he let Alex Van Pelt, who called a ridiculous game this past weekend, will he let him continue to do the play calling, and will he just sit back and be the head coach? That is one of the questions I want to know, because obviously Baker Mayfield and his offense have a real rapport with Alex Van Pelt and everything he had to deal with. 2 offensive linemen go down and they don't miss a beat at all. The backups come in and perform not only admirably, I would say performed at a high level. So will he let Alex Van Pelt continue to call the plays on the sideline, or will he take over play calling duties like he did during the season?
Were you surprised? You said you had the Browns. Were you surprised to see the Steelers collapse that big, that early?
No, I don't think anybody saw that coming. I thought it was going to be a close game, and then maybe the Browns get the ball at the end, kick a field goal, or maybe Kareem Hunt runs in a touchdown at the end. I don't think anybody saw that type of collapse from the onset of the game. Like, it literally started from the beginning of the game with the botched snap that turns into a field goal, and from there, it just kept falling and falling. Now, the Steelers had a chance to come back in the game, and I know Mike Tomlin got a lot of grief for this, punting the ball with only down by 2 scores. I think in the beginning of the 4th quarter, I think everybody was like, you have to go for it. I mean, you've made this comeback. You're down by, I believe they're only down by 12 points at the time. This is your chance to really put pressure back on the Browns. You get this first down to maybe get a field goal here and cut it to 9 points, or even score a touchdown and cut it within 1 score game. Then it's a lot of pressure back on Baker Mayfield. But again, every time that the Steelers answered, Baker Mayfield and the offense had an answer for them. And you got to give a kudos to Baker Mayfield, also Alex Van Pelt, and the whole offensive staff.
Do you think the Juju comments, do you think it was overblown that this is going to motivate them, or do you think it did kind of piss them off?
Of course it pissed them off. Being a player on this team, I kind of talked about this on CBS Friday before the games this weekend. Like, I had a coach tell me, you don't want to give the team a bulletin board material. And Juju, I don't know what it was, why he hadn't learned his lesson. The Cincinnati game, he did that nonsense to spike the ball on the field. I was telling all my friends, like, there's no way in the NFL that I played in that he would have been allowed to do that. If I would have seen that repetitive behavior for him, by the time they played my team, I would have been out there with the kickers with my helmet and everything, waiting for him to do some nonsense like that, because it would have started a brawl before the game. Like, you don't disrespect anybody's logo. Yes, I know you're doing it all fun and everything, but that's highly disrespectful. And you can see that the Browns players felt a way about that. If you look at their celebrations at the end of the game in the locker room, you could tell that was on the back of their mind and in the front of their mind while they were playing against the Steelers on this past weekend.
And I saw apparently Sammy Watkins did the same thing. So we could be seeing another upset on Sunday.
Hold on, I missed that. What did Sammy Watkins come out and say?
Sammy Watkins apparently said it's going to be a breeze playing Cleveland. So I don't know. But
maybe they're using that as motivation. I don't know. The Kansas City Chiefs are a lot different from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. I do believe they'll start slow, kind of like they did last year in the divisional round, only because they haven't really played in 2 weeks. If you look at it, the last time all of the starters played was week 16 versus the Atlanta Falcons. And even then, the offense didn't really look like it was gelling as well as it had in the past. But the thing is, when you got 15 on your team, no matter what the score is, you're never out of a game. This guy versus the Miami Dolphins had 3 first-half interceptions. Well, not 3 first-half, but he had 3 interceptions the whole game and still put up 30-plus points against that defense. So when you have Mahomes back there at quarterback, you're never out of the game. I think the Browns have a fighting chance just because of their rushing attack. I think a lot of it is going to depend on if Bettino is, activated from the COVID list, and also if, the Conklin injury isn't as bad as it looked, during the game this past weekend. I think they have to have those two playing for them to have a chance. Although it showed that the other offensive linemen came in and were able to, really, get in those positions. Anytime you're playing behind a Pro Bowl and you come in and there's really no drop off, then that's a big thing. That proves that the offensive line coach has done a great job. And shout out to Callahan, and also that the offensive coaches and coordinators has got this offense, from the starters to the backups, everybody ready to play and pitch in to help have the Browns win a game.
Is Big Ben done?
I believe he is. I believe that the Steelers need to move on, and I think if Mike Tomlin wants another chance, which he's going to be there next year, but if he wants another chance besides next year, that it's time for them to find the heir apparent. And it kind of sucks. It's almost like the New England situation, right? Tom Brady ups and leave, and they really have no heir apparent to who's going to be the quarterback. And, for years, they've drafted guys in the 3rd and 4th round. I think Mason Rudolph was a 3rd-round pick, but they've never drafted that 1st-round pick. And it's funny because quarterbacks always get sensitive, and players and coaches get sensitive too. Like the Aaron Rodgers thing in Green Bay, they were mad that Love, was drafted, but they're looking at the long run. Like Aaron Rodgers has got 3, maybe 4 more years. So just like when you became the quarterback, when Brett Favre was there, that's the thing that killed me. I'm like, how can Aaron Rodgers get mad when he essentially did the same thing to a Hall of Fame quarterback himself? And that is just the business. Like, Father Time is undefeated. You're not going to play forever. And if you don't have an heir apparent answer to the guy that's been there forever, then your franchise is going to struggle for 3 or 4 years until you find that guy. So I think Green Bay did a great job in drafting Love and letting him mold. He probably won't even take a snap until his 4th or 5th year. So they did a great job. Let him sit back, mold, just like Aaron Rodgers did, just like Patrick Mahomes did, sit for a year. Anytime you feel like there's a quarterback that can be the heir apparent, you have to pull that trigger because you don't want to be left like New England, not knowing what you're going to do at the quarterback position.
Of the guys that are rumored to be available this year, not guys that are going to be selected in the draft, either free agents or guys like a Stafford or a Matt Ryan that you think might be available. Who do you like is the best fit if they do replace Roethlisberger?
I like Stafford. To me, Stafford has been in the black hole in Detroit. I don't think people really understand what he's done with his arm, what type of arm he has, and the passing records he has set in Detroit because he plays for Detroit. I really hope that Detroit lets him free. And I know the head coach coming in there probably doesn't want that to happen because without Stafford, it's going to be a real struggle, and they really don't have an heir apparent backup there either. So, what is your options? But a team like maybe potentially San Fran, a team like Pittsburgh could use Stafford, a team that's kind of already built to win now, or even a team like Chicago, but there's no way they're trading him in the division. A team like that could really use Matt Stafford, and maybe, the rest of the nation can see how good Matt Stafford is and how tough this kid is. I mean, if you see it time after time, Zach, this guy is getting brutally beat up, and he could shut it down, but he never shuts it down. He always finds a way to get back in the game and help his team try to win the game. And then it was no more apparent than that Week 17 game. They were down. He was able to lift his team up to a victory, and he really had nothing to play for. He was beat up, mangled the whole season. He could have really sat out that week, 17 and been like, I'm waiting for a trade next year. I'm going to leave as healthy as possible because I've already been beat up. But it shows his character. He went out there and laid it on the line for his teammates.
He's going to walk into the front office and say, you know what? I'm having Thanksgiving on time this year. Trade me. I'm not dealing with this. I'm not dealing with this anymore.
He could have did that, but he decided not to and played as many games as he could.
Yeah. It's wild. And then so going from the top, so we had first game of the afternoon, we have Buffalo and the Colts. What was your opinion on that controversial call in the fourth quarter?
Which the non-fumble call on the fumble?
Yeah.
I was watching it with a group of friends, right? And I told them that since they said that he was down by contact or gave himself up, that was going to be the call on the field. And you've seen it a couple of times throughout the year in the NFL where guys, are on the ground and then nobody touches them and then the player punches the ball out. And by the rules, it should be a fumble, right? Because unless you blatantly give yourself up, like tap on the ground and try to find the ref and hand him the ball. But because it was so close and you couldn't tell whether Jordan Poyer's arm was on the back of him by the time he was getting up, I told everybody, they were like, that's a fumble. I'm like, there's no way they're overturning that. They're going to say he was down by contact and he gave himself up. Just because I've seen it happen numerous times throughout the NFL season. And what refs are supposed to do is if you call a call one way, you got to call it like that the rest of the game. And that hasn't really happened in the NFL. We've seen refs make one call this way and not another call, like if you go, for instance, if you go to the Baltimore-Tennessee game, you have the push off by A.J. Brown for the touchdown. But yet they call a pass interference on third and short, or maybe fourth and short on the Ravens, where it really wasn't that bad. I feel like Willie Snead really wasn't trying to impede a defender. Of course, he was just trying to set up in the zone because that's where his position was. But yes, it's a rub play, but it wasn't blatant. It wasn't like he tried to knock the defender off. But yet they called OPI on that. So they haven't called it fair. But that call more specifically, they've called that fair throughout the year. So in my head, I was like, there's no way they're going to overturn that. He's going to be down by contact.
One thing I noticed about that I thought was like an incredible vet move that people really weren't talking about is when I think it was Pascal, when he was on the ground and Poyer standing behind him, Poyer was waiting for him to get up because he didn't want to just keep him down. He was waiting for him to get up. He's like, that's a vet move.
Exactly.
Yeah, to wait. He's like, oh, he's getting up. Why is he getting up? All right. And nobody gave him credit for that. I'm like, that is an incredible play. This restraint to it's kind of like when you want to kind of keep the guy in bounds when the game's coming to an end. Incredible play that nobody was talking about. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah,
I think nobody talked about it because he ultimately didn't get the turnover, right? And DB has gotten really smart about this, because a lot of receivers are so used to when they go to the ground, somebody touching them or hitting them on the ground. But I've seen it multiple times throughout this year and in the past, where I'll see a DB wait till a guy gets up and then punch the ball in his hand because the receiver's lax with the ball, thinking that he's already down and the play is already over. But I would say 8 out of 10 times the DB doesn't get the turnover because if the ref blows a whistle and rules him down, then the play is over.
You think the fact that it was within 2 minutes and they couldn't, the fact that it was a BS challenge. I don't like those because if the coach can't challenge and they go, oh, we got the timeout challenge. What the hell is that?
That is starting to piss me off watching that throughout the NFL and in college, right? Because they've done it on both levels. My thing is, why are you allowed to call a timeout? You're allowed to call a timeout whenever you want to. I'll give you that. But you can't entice a ref to go look at a play. They should start finding organizations for that because they're slowing up the game. My thing is the refs, you have to weigh in the human factor, right? The refs are human. If they got the call wrong, they got it wrong. And within the rules, if you can't challenge, then you should not be allowed to call a timeout and ask the refs to look at something closely. Like they do that in the NBA too when they're out of challenge.
All the time in the NBA.
I feel like they should give them a 30-second timeout, get everybody on the field. There's no looking at anything. If before the play is not snapped and they didn't call you from New York and say, look at the play, then it should be over. All right. That's the human element of refs. And it's really ridiculous. They really need to look at this in the NFL because it's getting ridiculous. They're slowing games down for no reason because coaches are calling timeouts to get the refs to look at plays a little bit longer.
Because if that goes a different way and Phil Rivers throws a bomb touchdown and the Bills are upset, everybody on Monday morning saying, why were they able to challenge? They didn't have a timeout or it was within 2 minutes. That
It was
that
within
was
2 minutes, exactly.
yeah, it was good. So I know you were telling me. I know you said you like the Colts. Are you flipping over the Bills side? You confident in them? Or you still think they're going to lose early?
Well, if anybody has been watching me and following me, they know I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. So there's no way I could pick the Bills if I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. And honestly, my bracket is looking kind of good, Zach. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the shoulder because on CBS Friday, I said that I believe that the Ravens and the Chiefs would meet in the AFC Championship. And for that to happen, the Browns would have to have won versus Pittsburgh. So my picks on the AFC side right now are looking kind of good. I mean, I did pick the Colts to win, and if they actually had kicked the field goal earlier in the game and Blankenship doesn't miss that field goal, they probably would have won the game. So, it was a close game, came down to the end, a Hail Mary by Phillip Rivers that didn't get to the end zone, which was kind of crazy. But I got Baltimore winning this week. One, because it's potentially supposed to snow. There's going to be some wind. And that usually favors a team that's a little bit more tough and likes to run the ball effectively. And we already know that the Ravens have the number one rushing team in the NFL, averaging over 230 yards rushing. Adversely, the Bills are more of an air raid type team, especially since they brought Diggs over. Josh Allen averages throwing over 280 yards per game. I think that will be affected by the snow and the wind. And we've already seen the Bills usually aren't a good really rushing team. They only average 107 yards rushing per game, and a lot of that has to do with Josh Allen too. Now, I will think they'll get his legs more involved in this game if weather is a factor. But if I'm basing it off the weather and the toughness and the defense, I got to go with the Ravens.
And so speaking of the Ravens, they beat the Titans on 1:00 on Sunday. Were you surprised the Titans were playing so conservative? It seems like they were playing not to lose.
I don't think they were playing conservative. I feel like that's how they've been playing all year long, right? They run the ball effectively, take big shots to A.J. Brown down the field. And what people aren't talking about a lot, Corey Davis, I think that injury was monumental because a lot of times in the play action pass games, those underneath routes, that's where the ball goes. Corey Davis, everybody was listing him as a bust, almost 1,000 yards receiving this year. And it's because of the run game. It really helped them in those play action pass games, all the underneath routes. And also when A.J. Brown was hurt earlier in this year, Corey Davis was going off. He was Ryan Tannehill's number one guy. So a lot of people didn't talk about that. And even the guys on the play-by-play guy and the announcers, they weren't talking about that during the game. And I thought that was a big point. Once Corey Davis got hurt, that offense kind of really went down and it never really recovered after that because now the Ravens can roll that coverage to A.J. Brown. And the front seven did their thing from Baltimore. And I called this on Friday too. I don't think people realized the Calais Campbell had been kind of beat up throughout the year. And he was starting to get healthy. So same thing with Brandon Williams, one of the best run nose tackles in all of football. Him along with Derek Wolfe make up their three-man front. And I felt like they were going to put it on themselves to stop Derrick Henry. I don't know if you saw Calais Campbell pregame. He was talking so much noise to the offensive line. So I knew that defense was ready to play and that King Henry wasn't going to get 100-plus yards rushing. They were going to make Ryan Tannehill beat them. And once Corey Davis went down, it was going to be a problem for them to do that.
What's wrong with the Titans defense?
I mean, honestly, for what they did versus the Ravens, I don't know if Mike Vrabel could have asked them to do much more, right? They had a turnover earlier in the game. They held them a few times. But, Lamar Jackson's a special player, and I think he was tired of everybody talking about, can he get over the hump? Can he get over the playoff hump? And he really put that on his back and rode that into the game. Now, they've struggled. For one, they can't get any pass rush. That was probably the best game that, Hollywood Brown played all year long. And you have to give a shout out to Greg Roman. He made sure that they force-fed him the ball. That way, they really couldn't stack the box. You go one-on-one with a guy that has speed like Hollywood Brown, Lamar Jackson knows where to go with the ball every time. He's going to go to his big play receiver outside, the number one guy. And they really got him the ball and got him involved very early in the game. That's something they're going to need to try to do this week. If there's one factor, try to get him some end arounds, try to get him some speed sweeps, some quick screens, just to get that ball in his hands because he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands, one of the fastest guys in the NFL. And we saw that versus the Titans this past weekend. They got him the ball early and often, and it helped with the run game because they were going so much man coverage. Adoree Jackson was getting murdered by Hollywood Brown that you had to start maybe keeping some of your safeties back for that run game. And then we saw that in the second half. Some of those holes opened up in the middle for Lamar Jackson.
Interesting. And then so going back to Saturday, middle game, we've got the Rams and the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. The Seahawks did fire their offensive coordinator, drawing a blank.
Ryan
Schottenheimer. What do you think? Like they should have won. They should have won on paper. They should have won that game. What do you think?
Yeah, but that's why the game's not played on paper, right? You look at it coming in, Jared Goff is not going to play because he has a thumb injury. Walford then gets hurt. So you're like, okay, Jared Goff, he's been practicing a little bit, but he hasn't really taken any live action in about 2 weeks. Oh, we should feast on these guys. But what they didn't account for, and what you have to account for in the Sean McVay's offense, is he's going to run the pill. All right, Cam Akers single-handedly for that offense put that game on his back and rode the Rams into the next round of the playoffs. This guy, I think, had over 170 all-purpose yards. He was running physical and running with vision. That stretch zone scheme that they run and they play action off it, which really helped them with that Robert Woods touchdown later on in the game, is because Cam Akers was so effective with running the ball. They thought Robert Woods was coming to block. He comes around on a drag route and it's wide open. That's the effect that happens when you're able to run the ball effectively and I think Andrew Whitworth coming back was a big thing for the Rams, getting some of that veteran leadership. And he's played in the scheme now, I believe, for 4 years. And that offensive line was cooking, even the young guys up front that they had. When you can get that zone one cut downhill, and that's perfect scheme for Cam Akers, then the Rams can honestly beat anybody, because that defense with Brandon Staley, they can line up. That goes anywhere. Literally, they can go anywhere with that defense. And I think we'll see a little bit of that this week. That's one of my favorite matchups this week is Aaron Rodgers versus that defense and Brandon Staley's defense. We're going to see what Brandon Staley does. They said that Aaron Donald will play. Sean McVay's already come out and said the Terminator will play this game. But I think an underlying factor is Leonard Floyd. His outside mate, 10 plus sacks this year. This guy has been a perfect pair to Aaron Donald. A lot of people, double team, triple team Aaron Donald. But if you have a guy like Leonard Floyd on the outside that can get you 10 sacks, and then also Fox, the other defensive end inside, 6 sacks. And when Aaron Donald went down in the game, he showed up big versus Seattle, had a sack of Russell Wilson. So when you have multiple guys that can get after the quarterback, and you can't double team and triple team Aaron Donald because you're leaving one-on-one with, Leonard Floyd, and then you got, Fox in the inside beating guys one-on-one, then it's a long day for your offense. So what will Brandon Staley do? He's done a great job. And I see in the games for Seattle showing different looks, sometimes blitzing John Johnson, Michael Kaiser, and going man on the outside, sometimes going cover 2, cover 3 in the back end and just letting his 4 hogs up front get to the quarterback. Devonta Adams versus Jaylen Ramsey is going to tell the story this weekend. Now, Brandon Staley doesn't always man Jaylen Ramsey on the best receiver, but I guarantee for about 60% of this game, it's going to be mono. And whoever wins that matchup most likely will help their team win the game.
Do you think early on during the game, assuming Jaylen Ramsey is strapping Devonta Adams, do you think the number one talking point the announcers are going to be like, man, maybe they should have drafted a receiver in the first round over Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have anybody to give it to.
I don't agree with that, just because so many receivers have showed up big for them. Marquez Valdes-Scantling showed up big, and Lasardo showed up big for them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And then Robert Tonyan is a guy that I couldn't believe in the All-Pro they didn't vote in a second tight end, because he should have been All-Pro second tight end. He should have been in the Pro Bowl for the NFC. It's travesty that he didn't get in.
Evan Engram. I don't know how Evan Engram got that. It should have been
the Giant Nation is strong. That's what that is. But how Robert Tonyan doesn't make Pro Bowl and All-Pro is just baffling to me. You're talking about or a year where Travis Kelce is clear cut and unanimous All-Pro decision for first team. But that second pro team, I think Tonyan or even Waller. Also, even Waller maybe could deserve to be second team. But for them not to vote anybody in the second team was travesty. And for Tonyan not to be first team Pro Bowl selection in the NFC is a travesty.
So who do you like for that game?
I'm picking Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers has the most pressure out of all the quarterbacks this week, just because, everybody's been so high on them in the NFC, thinking that they're going to go straight to the Super Bowl. And also that meltdown they had in the NFC Championship last year. But I believe Aaron Rodgers will get over the hump. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the cold weather, really bodes well for Green Bay, because they've played in it. The Rams have been, inside most of the year, playing inside the dome. And also the NFC West, you got Arizona, which is not bad. Even Seattle, it can get cold, but it's not really that bad to play there late in December. So I think Green Bay playing in that cold weather, Aaron Rodgers has been pinpoint. Now I think they'll start a little slow, just because they had last week off. The Rams will probably start off a little bit faster, running the ball. I think Damon Snacks Harrison is the big signing for them, and stopping Cam Akers in this run game. I think that's going to prove to be big. And I think you saw it last week versus Seattle. Seattle, he wanted to get out of there because they weren't playing him. I think Seattle, if they could go back and change the time, like Superman, fly around the world and reverse it, they would make sure the Snacks was playing, because that ball got ran down their throat last week, and it's because they didn't have anybody in the middle to stop it. And I think Damon Snacks Harrison would have been a guy that could do that for them, and I think that really hurt them. Adversely, I think it's going to really help the Green Bay Packers stop this Rams rushing attack.
And then to the night game, you get the Washington football team. I'm still getting used to saying that. Were you surprised they were able to kind of keep up with Tampa?
Not really. For one, nobody had a real scouting report on Tyler Heineke. I knew he was an athletic quarterback. He really didn't show his wheels until like late in the game. But I knew when you only have a scouting report on a quarterback, it's really hard to scout for him. And they didn't even really know until like a day before that Alex Smith wasn't going to play. So they literally had been scheming for Alex Smith the whole game. So you throw this young guy in, you don't have film on. But a lot of players have talked highly of him. I talked to Torrey Smith. He's spoken highly of him. I know Cam Newton loves him when he was with him in Carolina. But this guy was proved that he deserves to be in the NFL. I'm talking about not just with his legs, with his arm, pinpoint throws, putting the ball on the money to receivers, McLaurin, to Logan Thomas, the tight end, and Sims. Both Sims actually had pretty big days for the Washington Redskins. This guy was releasing balls before receivers were out of break, and it's really unique to see that for a guy that hadn't really been on the roster the whole year and doesn't really have a rapport with receivers. For him to have that continuity and confidence to let that ball go, knowing that his receivers are going to be there. I mean, it's something you usually don't see in the NFL, and kudos to that kid. He literally left it on the line, and I couldn't be more proud of him and what he did, coming from school, having to delay his exams because, he got to call up to the Washington football team to play at the playoff game. I mean, that's big.
No, I was on the press conference, and like Morgan Moses was like, he's like, I will go to battle with this dude. And Terry McLaurin said, I'll go to battle with him every day and twice on Sundays. And they were, do you think, what do you see his future projection is? Do you think he's just a backup, or we don't know yet?
We don't know. I mean, it's hard. I think he's played 2, maybe 3 games in the NFL. Yeah. It's hard to really to really rate somebody after that small or microcosm of film and him playing. So we'd have to see what he does, during training camp. I think he deserves to be back on that team. And I don't know what they're going to do as far as the draft next year. Their first round pick is gone. So I could see them drafting the quarterback, but where will they draft him? Will they draft him in the first round or second or third round? But I believe he deserves a chance to play and maybe even start off of what he did in the playoffs. I'm not saying he's going to be their heir apparent starter right away, because you have to earn that right? Like he's played one game, he played really good. Well, the NFL is, what have you done for me lately? He has to be more consistent, and we'll see if he can be consistent if given the opportunity.
I was running the social media for the radio station, and I think it was after he had the rushing touchdown. I tweeted out something like, Taylor Heineke will never have to pay for a beer in the District of Columbia ever again. And this dude replied, it's one of the best replies I've ever seen. Some guy goes, I live in Atlanta. I'm going to make sure it's the same shit here. I'm like, all right. I'm not
I think he took the nation on by storm this past weekend.
They love him here. He's the biggest. It's unbelievable. And for Tampa, what the offense looks great, but what are you thinking? They're playing the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the first thing they have to get over is the mental hump, right? Because this is a team that literally destroyed them twice earlier this year. I think Bruce Arians coming out and saying that we always knew that we were going to be at this point where we had to face the Saints, because if you want to get to that next level, you got to beat up the bully, and the bully has been beating you bloody red earlier this year. So I think this is a game that Tom Brady, in the back of his mind, knew was going to happen before the NFC Championship game, and it's a game that I feel like he really, really wants, because Drew Brees and the Saints have gotten over them twice. Literally, the second game, the only reason why Tampa Bay scored is because they decided to kick a field goal at the end, or they would have had a goose egg up on the board. I think they were down 38-0 and decided to kick a field goal, in the fourth quarter, which pissed a lot of people off. But, Bruce Arians doesn't care about that. So this is the thing, is they have to get over the mental aspect and hump of this, because this is a team, like I said, that's owned them this year, won the division. Not only beat the brakes off of them in New Orleans, beat the brakes off of them in Tampa Bay. So this is a team that I know for sure that defensive coordinator Todd Bowles has circled in the back of his head, because his defense has gotten embarrassed twice against them, and that's something that he really doesn't want. And even last week, they played well, especially the first half. But Tyler Heineke kind of had his way that second half with them, and that's something that he's definitely thinking about. I think ultimately this game will be a lot closer. I don't believe it's going to be a blowout. This is playoff football. Tom Brady always bounces back. I believe it's going to be a one-score game, but ultimately I believe the New Orleans Saints are just too much for, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That defense that New Orleans has, their DBs can match up with all the, the Tampa Bay receivers. And yes, they're deep at the receiver position on Tampa Bay, but they're deep in the secondary for New Orleans. They literally go about 4 or 5 deep, and these guys can cover from the safeties to the corners. They've all been Pro Bowlers before, and it's going to be a good game. Ultimately, like I said, I believe Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, and Mike Thomas will be a little bit too much for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think also Latavius Murray could play a major role in this game and getting the running game going. I think Kamara's a nightmare, split out. Also, I don't know if we've got confirmation if Devin White will be allowed to play in this game yet. But that could be monumental too, because this guy does so much for them as far as coveraging, and he's probably one of the best blitzing linebackers. You saw Levante David kind of take over that role as far as blitzing because Devin White wasn't there. But will they, switch that up? If Devin White comes back, will Levante be more the coverage guy, and they'll send Devin White to go get the quarterback because he is one of the best blitzing linebackers in football. I actually liked him coming out of LSU. I remember doing a little talk up about him on Good Morning Football, and I said this guy's the best blitzing linebacker in all of college football, and it's translated well to the NFL.
What did you think of the Nickelodeon broadcast? Everybody watched. You watched it, right?
Oh, it was amazing. Like I turned over from the game and went to Nickelodeon. Once I found out my guy Nate Burleson was on the call, and like they literally were like, so if you were a kid and you were a father, that was a way for you to bond with your kids right there. They literally broke down the game of football for little kids to understand. And it's amazing. I hope they continue to do that at least once or twice a year because that was amazing. Who doesn't like slime-filled touchdowns?
Apparently, Trubisky was supposed to be slime, and he was nowhere to be found. Apparently, because he was the MVP.
He won MVP, but they ended up sliming Sean Payton instead.
I saw that.
Which pissed me off because he kept his J's on. Like, that's a Cardinal sin.
I saw that, too.
That's a Cardinal sin, man.
All right, this is one of the underlying stories that nobody's talking about. Is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson the best shit talker in the NFL?
Okay, Zach, now I'm going to speak from the heart here. I don't know what this kid is doing to these receivers, but he would have to come see me in the offseason. I think I said that on Twitter too, because I was like, I don't know what he's getting dudes to do to react like that, specifically Chicago, but there's supposedly some with Mike Thomas too. So like he's got to be talking so greasy that when your own teammates has a problem with you and gets into he's got to be saying something crazy that like I know, like he kind of reminds me of Verjao from Cleveland, from the Cavaliers. Like it's one of those annoying guys that
flopping. He invented it.
Yeah, it's one of those annoying guys that gets under your skin, and that's part of my game. Yeah, it can be part of your game, but come to offseason, it's gonna be part of these hands.
No, because every week
I don't know what for a guy literally to after the play run up to you full speed, take your chain off, mush you, then swing on you. And then that same team he played in the playoffs, another receiver does it. Like, nah, he's got to be saying something crazy. Like, people can get you to act out of character, but he's a repeat offender. So I don't know what school of trash talking he went to, but it's crazy. Supposedly that Bruce Arians has already talked to his receivers about that because this guy, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what he's doing, but he's getting people to act out of character every Sunday.
It's unbelievable. It's like he's DMing like KG on the sideline. Like, hey, what should I say? What should I say? It's
got to be.
It's unbelievable, and I think that should be one of the NFL honors of the year. Just like who gets under your skin.
Somebody should be mic'd up just to hear what he says.
They should have him mic'd up. I don't know. They're not going to.
I've never seen one player. I've seen players get under people's skins, right? Like I have a teammate Richie Incognito. He used to get up under a lot of defensive linemen's skin.
Oh yeah.
But he would mainly do stuff like, physical, like right on that borderline of the whistle, lay on you, push you a little bit after the whistle. Yeah. But these receivers are running up to him after play. So like, what is he saying to them in between plays that I don't get it? Because it's not like a natural reaction where he says something and it just happens right away. It's always after the fact. So it's like, did you have to really sit and think about what he said to make you want to act out of character, later on in the game?
Yeah, no, because everybody's talking about it. There's like the Saints have a great defense. You got Marshawn Lattimore, you got Cameron Jordan, you got what's his name?
Janoris Jenkins,
Malcolm Jenkins. You got they got the kid from
Mario.
Demario Davis. Nobody's talking about the shit talking corner. My man.
That's probably how he likes it too. He wants to be under the radar so he can keep getting guys fined.
Yeah. Every time I see somebody get ejected, I'm like, wait a minute. Are they playing the Saints? Yep.
100%. It feels like that's the only game that it happens is when they're playing the Saints.
He gets matched up against Antonio Brown. What's going to happen this week?
I think Antonio Brown is at a place now where like he can probably say whatever he wants. Yeah, because he already knows like he's under a microscope, so he can. If it would be anybody, honestly, I feel like it would be Mike Evans.
Really?
They sometimes line Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in the slot, so I can see it happening.
No,
Mike Evans he's not with all that. Like I can see him.
No.
And I wouldn't be surprised with Coach Payton and them like, keep egging them on a little bit. Just don't cross the line. Egg them on a little bit. Don't cross the line.
Unbelievable. No, and then so you said you don't think the Saints are going to get killed on some memorable call again this year? You think they're going to make it to the NFC Championship?
I think they ultimately make it to the NFC Championship. I feel like last week would have been the week that they had a bogus call, but they kind of had that game in hand from the beginning of the game. I think once Wims dropped that touchdown pass, it was over with for Chicago. They had no chance at all. I think, like I said, the way that defense is playing this year, and usually, it's Cam Jordan, leading the way, but Hendrickson, Granderson, other guys that have been showing up on that defensive line, and then Demario Davis is a consummate pro, should be a Pro Bowl year in, year out. Just the NFC's linebackers are just so stacked. It's hard for him to get in there. And then you look at the back end, you bring in Jenkins, who's also a consummate pro, been a Pro Bowl. Marcus Williams is another great player. That's what I'm saying. Their secondary can literally match up with any receiving crew. You talked about it, Gardner Johnson in the slot, and then you look at the outside. You got Janoris Jenkins, the Jackrabbit, and you got Marshawn Lattimore. Both of these guys have been Pro Bowlers before. Yeah. So it's like, as you face this defense, you're in for a long day with that defense because the rush and coverage works really well together.
Is that the game of the week for you?
Baltimore, Buffalo for sure.
Interesting.
It might be the game of the week for a lot of people because we don't know if this could potentially be Drew Brees or Tom Brady's last game. But I mean, they've played twice already for me, so it's like I got the Saints winning that game. I'm not saying they're gonna win it easy. I think it's going to be a one-score game, but I ultimately have the Saints winning that game. I think that Baltimore-Buffalo game is going to tell some stories.
And you said you have Baltimore winning the chip.
Oh yeah, so they have to win this week.
So how do you see them beating the Chiefs? Because right now I don't see anybody beating the Chiefs.
Well, I think Baltimore's the one team that can slow the game down, and the Browns can too by running the football. But I believe just Lamar Jackson's the X factor. I believe him getting over the hump will only give him more and more confidence. And if you're looking at the defense, that's the one defense also besides New Orleans with the three defensive backs that can almost match up with anybody. Now, nobody can match up with Tyreek Hill's speed, right? That's just nonsensical to even think that. But that's a team that can limit the run, and they have guys up front that can get up to the quarterback and Matt Judon on the outside. And then they also traded for Yannick on the outside, and he's mainly been just a third down rush for them. Yeah. But McAfee, a guy that people aren't really talking about, he played a monumental game versus Tennessee and stopping the run. He's been more of their base type end guy, but he can also get up to the quarterback. And inside, you got Calais Campbell, a guy that can get up to the quarterback. And then you look at the outside, right? Marlon Humphrey, Pro Bowler. Marcus Peter, Pro Bowler. Jimmy Smith's been a Pro Bowler in the back. Yeah. And he's back and getting healthier and healthier. So you really have to like what you see from that secondary. And a lot of people have let Baltimore slip under the radar, and I think they like it right where they're at, right? A lot of people aren't talking about them. People had kind of wrote them off. They literally have been playing playoff games for the last 4 or 5 weeks, Zach. Yeah. So they're the one team, and I would say the Browns too, but they end up beating the Browns, right? Yeah. They've played, I would say, like 5 or 6 straight
cramps.
Playoff
games. What
do
they call it? Cramps? Lamar didn't have cramps. Get the hell out of here.
I don't know what he had, but he came back in like the Black Panther and took this team to the playoffs. They've played consecutively like 5 or 6 playoff games going back to the regular season because they had to win week in and week out just to stay in the playoff hunt. And teams that usually are playing their best football in December can make playoff runs. It kind of reminds me of that team that when Baltimore won the Super Bowl, I believe they were 5 or 6 seed. They were kind of based off their offense, that year. And their offense is really good this year, but that defense can be a game changer for them.
Who do you think they match up with? Do you think it's Green Bay or New Orleans?
I'm going to say Green Bay because if Green Bay, and I have Green Bay and New Orleans winning, New Orleans going to that cold again, like I said, I think it's going to be different. It also depends on, the receivers besides Devonta Adams for Green Bay, which one of them are going to show up? Because like we said, New Orleans DBs can match up against anybody. And I don't see them locking, Lattimore with Devonta Adams if they win. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves because Janoris Jenkins is just as good, so that's a really good, problem to have if you're a defensive coordinator where you can leave your corners on each side because, each one of them can man up. And that's a blessing to have as a defensive coordinator. And you have a good coverage corner in Marcus Williams, and also Jenkins, their safety, can play up in the box and stop, Aaron Jones and that rushing attack. So I think they match up well, but I just think Aaron Rodgers, after, like I said, what happened in the NFC Championship, he's just been on a whole different level. He should win the MVP this year. I know a lot of people are saying Patrick Mahomes, but I feel like down the long haul of the season, Mahomes play kind of slipped, and that's when Aaron Rodgers kind of took off on him. Aaron Rodgers should win the MVP undoubtedly, and I do believe that they'll get to the Super Bowl versus the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, and I got one last question for you. So when are they going to announce that Deshaun Watson got traded to Washington, D.C.? When's that coming?
I don't know if it's going to happen, right? If you look at it, Deshaun Watson literally is a top 3 quarterback right now from how he's been playing the last couple of years. And even this year, led the league in passing with name some of his receivers. I mean, Brandon Cook was there, but he was hurt a little bit. His big receiver, Will Fuller, missed the last 6 weeks of the season.
Cecil Short still there? They got Cecil Short. He's still over there?
No, he's retired. He retired, man. Cecil Short retired. Cobb was hurt, beat up. Like, I think it was a QT or QT. It's hard to say his name. QT ended up being his main receiver like the last month of the season. And this guy has a lot of potential, but he's always been banged up too. So this guy did it with guys that hadn't been there or had been there, but hadn't been main guys for a long time. And he was still putting up 300 plus passing yards every single week. So it's like, if you want to trade him, and you don't want to trade him, but if the relationship is almost like James Harden, where it's too damaged to recover, and they try to recover it by, interviewing Eric Bieniemy, but it's after the fact. You said that he was going to be part of the whole process. My thing is, nobody volunteered you to say that information. You decided to come out and say, Deshaun Watson, we'll keep him abreast of all our decisions. And then you go behind his back and hire GM, and now you're going to like, okay, now we're going to interview Bieniemy. He's not going to believe you. Like, come on now. So like, if the relationship is so damaged, like, what do you get in return for that? You got to think about it. Jamal Adams, 2 first-round picks for him. Yeah. Stephon Diggs, a first and a few other picks, right? So what do you get for a franchise quarterback that's a top 3 quarterback? Like, is there enough picks?
Like RG3 RG3 draft compensation or more?
I would say, what was RG3? Was it 2 or 3?
I think it was at least 2 and a swap, but I know the Rams didn't. None of the guys really panned.
So like, this is what I look at: the teams that could potentially do it, right? I would say Miami, because they have the draft capital, right? And do you put Tua? I would say, do you put Tua as part of that package? Now that means, does the GM believe in Tua? Because you're not doing that trade unless you believe in that quarterback. Because essentially, you're giving up your picks for a quarterback, right? Also, Miami has, I would say, what? They have 3 picks in the first 35 picks.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think next year another 2 firsts.
Yeah.
So they could potentially give up 2 firsts, like one
From
this year,
Houston,
one next year. One this year, one next year, 2, and maybe like a 3rd round pick. But if you're Houston, is that still enough? Like, honestly, like, this is the top 3 quarterback. If you look at it, you're going Patrick Mahomes based off this year alone. You're going Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, then maybe Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, right? So if you're thinking about those quarterbacks, what would you trade for them? You know what I'm saying? Like, what would you trade for to get Patrick Mahomes? What would you trade to get Aaron Rodgers?
I'd give them a Washington Monument if they got Patrick Mahomes. They would ship that shit over.
That's what I'm saying. But like, is there enough? Like, if you're Houston, you're like, nah, I need 3 first rounds and a pick and a player. Like, because that's the type of talent Deshaun Watson really is. So I don't believe he's going to get traded just because he literally just got that contract. And I don't think anybody's going to be willing to give up 3 first-round picks. I mean, if I'm Miami, I would maybe think about it. If they like Tua, I'm gonna see if I can get away with a Tua 2 first and maybe a 2nd and a 3rd. Not 2nd and 3rd, but 2nd or 3rd. They get one of them. They don't get both. But if they ask him for 3 firsts and Tua, that's high. I mean, I think he's worth it, but I don't know if you're Miami, do you do that?
Well, the Jets got all the picks for Jamal Adams, and they've got number 2. You can't see them making a move.
I don't see it because I think they're going to give Sam Darnold one more year. I believe
Yep.
they're going to draft that tackle from Oregon and as a second overall pick.
He's fantastic.
And they've interviewed Robert Saleh twice, but it's going to come down to who comes in as the offensive coach and quarterback coach for Sam Darnold. You got to think about it now. I believe this is his third coordinator, and that's tough. You want to see a guy really flourish, but you keep changing the offensive scheme around him every 2 years. It's hard for a guy to really flourish. You're literally, I think I heard Aaron Rodgers said it takes about 2 years. And if you look at it, like last year, he kind of struggled with the floors. This year, he's taking off. It takes about 2 years for you to really, get comfortable in an offensive scheme and a system. So what will they do as far as the Jets hiring a coach? Will it be an offensive-minded coach, or will they get a defensive-minded coach like Robert Saleh, and then also bring in a great offensive-minded, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach and coordinator to help him out?
So you do not, even with Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins and all these guys. I think who else I saw, one of the former corners coming out saying like, "Get out of here." You see him staying.
Yeah, well, I've also heard that they're not going to trade him for nothing anyway. So I've kind of heard that rumor. I mean, I wouldn't either, because if I'm, just speaking business, if I'm the Houston Texans, I understand why you're mad. Yes, but no, you're a top 3 quarterback. And now, if he doesn't show up and doesn't want to play, then you might have to force it. They might force his hand then. But if that's not the case, and I know Deshaun Watson loves football, I think he really just wants to be able to compete. And he doesn't want any of his good years wasted, which is understandable. Yeah. And they're so cap strapped because of the Tunsil deal and his deal and so many other players' deals. But I think they'll get $17 million back from the JJ Watt release, and they really have to help out that defense.
Being released?
Oh, he's out of there. He should have been out of there. I'm gonna say it on here. He should have been out of there last year. Like, honestly, I haven't seen too many players that have been hurt as long as he's been and been able to stay around that long. Like, let's just be honest, right? The JJ Watt of Defensive Player of the Year has been gone for about 3-4 years. He's been hurt, I want to say, 2-3 out of the last 3 years, honestly. I don't think he's had a whole season in 3 years. And, he's meant a lot to that city. I think a lot of that, played a part in him. They probably would have had a riot if they cut him. But I believe this year, I think now, since it's been some years, I think people are more receptive to him being, especially with Deshaun Watson being, mad. They want to do anything they can to get, Deshaun Watson happy. So I could even see him taking a pay cut and maybe staying, but he might actually leave. Who knows? Because he feels like that, they're rebuilding and it's going to be a while before they're good again. So like I said, they can't even get help in the draft because they traded away so many draft picks and their cap strap. So it's going to be a struggle for them. They're going to probably have to release multiple players and literally start from square one.
Do you think Watt moves on to a different team? You think he hangs it up?
It just depends. You got to listen to your body. When I got to year 10, I kind of knew that it was over. I mean, I felt kind of good, but once you mentally start thinking about retirement, you're already retired. Like, I think I heard a quote like 2 days ago. It might have been on I Am Athlete. No, it was Marcellus Wiley on Speak for Yourself. He was talking to one of his teammates, I believe, when he got to Dallas at the end of his career, and was like, man, he was like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm feeling it. Once he was like, oh, no, you can't think like that, because once you already think like that, you're already in the grave. So, like, once you start having those thoughts about, when players say I'm going to speak to my family and see what's, they're already thinking about it, and they're already 1 foot in the grave.
When are one of these networks going to put I Am an Athlete on TV? Because more people need to be seeing this.
I mean, it's pretty big on YouTube, but it might eventually get there. I mean, Brandon's a busy man, so he got his thing on
Fox.
Showtime.
Fox already got the end.
He's on Fox on, First Things First. So eventually I think it might get picked up, but it might be something just for the internet because they're just so free on there. They may not can speak as freely on TV, Some things are just best suited for the internet.
My favorite thing I've seen on there, aside from the thing when they had Hugh Jackson on, when he was talking about with Ocho Cinco about what did he say? Call him in the middle of the night if you coach, I'm open.
I'm open, yeah.
Yeah. When they get like the meals delivered during the show, they got this dude walking in with the plate. I'm like, this is fantastic. It's like the bus boys got he's like, what the hell's going on? Keep rolling. We're on this shit. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, but it's great. Fred Taylor, they're outstanding. One last question. You have a bold predictions this offseason?
Bold predictions this offseason. Ooh, man, I'm so locked in on the playoffs. You already got me thinking about the offseason, man.
Oh, I'm a Washington fan, so we think about the offseason after May. So
I think there will be a I mean, it's not bold, but I think one of the teams that has a quarterback now that they may not love, i.e., San Francisco, Chicago. I'm trying to think who else could potentially be
With the
in that
Rams.
running. Pittsburgh or the Rams. I think one of those three teams will trade up to get one of the top three quarterbacks coming out in this year's draft.
Interesting. What do you think of Trey Lance? Because people are kind of falling off on him a little bit since he only played one game.
Yeah. I like his game a lot. Like you said, we only got the 1 year to kind of see him, but he seemed like he has the arm talent. He's definitely got the mobility. And if you look at quarterbacks from that program, I mean, Carson Wentz is struggling now, but they've generally done pretty well in the NFL. I believe. I think was it Nick Easton is he still back up with the Chargers?
Yeah,
I believe.
I think they're Colts now.
Oh, okay. So like their quarterbacks are usually decent in the NFL. So I feel like he'll be able to translate with that game. I mean, the NFL is moving to a more mobile style, quarterback anyway. So you have to be a little bit more mobile to last in the NFL. And I don't know where that's going to put Mac Jones at. But
he looks just like Saban. If you notice that when they had the Heisman, I'm like, all right, we got to see a DNA test.
Oh my God!
Because I know why he went to Tuscaloosa, and this dude.
Real?
And then for Wentz, do you think with Doug Peterson gone, do you think Wentz stays?
Oh, it's going to be 100% his team. I think that was the writing was on the wall when they fired Doug Peterson. They're going to be like, and I think the owner came out and said that too. Like, we're going to get a coach that can get Carson to be the best Carson he can be, and realize his talent again and everything. So, I mean, you see right there the owner, sliding with the $100+ million that he shoved out to his quarterback, and he's kind of hamstring tied because he really didn't have a choice but to do that. When you give a guy that much money, and it would be a big cap hit if you released him, and it would have been hard to find too many teams that would trade for him. And also the Colts could be in that discussion too, as far as teams trading up to get a quarterback.
So if you're Sudfeld, do you hold out? Like you've already national TV's already seen you. Like, see, you can ball. You
better hope you get another shot because opportunities are far and few in between.
Yeah, well, that's all the questions I really have for you. How can people find your podcast, find you on social media, keep up with you, and just see what you're doing?
Yeah, so on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's all the same at Leger Douzable, which is Leger. D as in dog, Ouzable. And then also my podcast, Anything is Douzable, is on YouTube. Also, Cooking with Chef Douz is on YouTube as well. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave your comments. I read them. And any suggestions that you have or questions that you might, want to ask me, I'm here for it.